Hello, and welcome to the North Coast Journal Preview, where we take a look at the stories in the current edition of the North Coast Journal. I'm your host, Dave Frank, and I'm joined by Thad Greenson, news editor, and Jennifer Fumiko Cahill, arts and features editor at the North Coast Journal. Welcome, guys.
Hey, Dave.
Hey, Dave, how you doing?
Good to see you again. Hope you guys had a fantastic long holiday weekend.
Likewise.
Lots of good food. I'm sure, Jen, I think I'd like to be a fly on the wall in Jen's Thanksgiving festival. I bet you there's some tasty stuff going on there, but we could talk about that offline or on another show. Why don't we just dive right in? Jen, this week, why don't you tell us what's on the cover?
This week, it's that time of year again, right? We have the seasonal signs. Fuzzy caterpillars show up. We know the winter is coming. And then the gift guide shows up. And the following week, it's flash fiction.
Right on.
Flash fiction. This is our annual 99-word story competition where people write any kind of story in 99 words, which seems both like a lot and not enough, depending. But if you read any flash fiction, typically it goes maybe up to like 500 or something at the most. But getting a story down to 99 words, I mean, it could have been 100, but we are stingy. You have to pay for ink, David. Getting it down to 99 words is no small feat. There's a lot of argument about what constitutes flash fiction, whether a vignette, just a scene, a slice of life, counts as flash fiction, whether a story has to have a beginning, middle, and end, what kind of changes need to take place, etc. But we have a very steadfast group of judges that have been helping us with this for the last few years. Bless their hearts. So we have Dave Holper, who is professor emeritus from College of the Redwoods and Eureka's first poet laureate. What's up, Dave? Wow. And we also have Joanne Bauer, who is on like a million different boards locally, but she is formerly a children's librarian. And I love having her on board because she's also a sci-fi fan. And so she has like a different set of tastes and usually brings something different in to what we're judging. We also have Jen McFadden, who is the owner of Booklegger Bookstore and a terrifyingly voracious reader, of course. Any place where you can walk in and say, there is a book about a guy and there was a thing in the place. And she's like, oh yeah, I know which one that is. Likewise, her former partner, now retired, Nancy Short. She also was an owner of Booklegger and now is retired and I think probably just reading full time. Nice. She pitched in with us too, and I'm so happy to keep her on board. And what we do is I take all of the submissions, which I stuck to the very strict Halloween deadline because we live for the drama. And then everything gets compiled anonymously into one document that I send out to all our judges, and then they root through them. Some of the judges score each of the stories. Some of the judges, myself, just viciously go through and eliminate round by round until only a staunch few are left standing. And then we get together with all of our notes and we compare. We share lists and we talk through things. Sometimes we have wildly different opinions on pieces. And sometimes we weirdly all gravitate to the same piece. And then I typically suss out the winner with input from the judges. And the winner that we came up with this year is Doug Ingold, who wrote a story called Breakfast. And it is exactly 99 words, and 3 judges picked it as their top 5 entries. And so it struck a chord with us.
Well, right on. So one thing I want to ask you about, if you don't mind me interrupting you briefly, I noticed that in the format, you include comments from judges on each of the pieces. Can you speak a little bit to that? Because I think that adds to the experience of reading through these.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes as somebody who has, submitted stories, submitted creative work to different places, you're always wondering, like, why this one? Or, why not that one? Or why not me? But I feel like the comments give an insight to what we found, what we enjoyed, and sometimes we're excited about different things in a story. And like I said, sometimes we totally disagree. So rather than just have a bunch of stories in without any commentary, we like to include the judges' notes. For example, in the winning story, Breakfast, it's a story that is about a very troubled young girl and her mother. And we found different things. I think what Dave found really moving about it was that it was sort of shocking. I mean, not shock value shocking, but that it was an intense story. And it sort of spoke to how little we can do in the face of other people's suffering. At least if I'm interpreting his notes properly. And, for Jen McFadden, she was talking about how this is a story of a daughter and also the mother, and her reaction, how she's dealing with her frightened child. And, that was closer to where I was with it. But I think it also kind of reminded me of the way that we, as terrible as things are, we have those everyday tasks. We have our big shows of affection, our grand gestures, but it ain't all promposals. And a lot of the sweetness that we give each other and the comfort we give each other is in daily stuff, like making breakfast for someone. So that story really moved us, but it's a pretty wild bunch. We have a couple of stories that are, as I referred to it, one of them is a cascading animal disaster story where one thing after another goes wrong in the tiny space of, I think that one might be 98 words. There's another
far too relatable.
Yeah, there's skunk spraying, there's puppies pooping. It's nightmares. For some of us, it was a little too soon to read that one. There's also a great story with a bear scare. There's a story about a guy who gets shot, I think accidentally, by his hunting buddies. There are ghosts who develop crushes on living beings. There is a tale of romantic intrigue upon which that hinges upon a pair of wool socks left behind. And then there's one that is a total flex. Somebody who busted out a story in 44 words.
That's what I was going to ask you about. I thought that was pretty wild.
Just showing off.
Yeah.
I think it's the shortest one we've ever had. I'll have to go back and look, but I believe it's the shortest one we've ever had. And it told a whole story. It actually kind of told two. It was amazing.
Yeah. It's pretty neat how the layers kind of, each of these stands on their own, of course, but the story that can be told, that it might not just be what is being on the surface. You have to look underneath and then maybe underneath again. And that's why I liked how you included that your format is to include your observations as judges, because I might have missed some, or readers out there might miss some of the deeper meanings, or it's just showing how creative and imaginative some of these writers really are. So what a rich bunch of submissions this year. Any final thoughts on this, on this year's winners?
Well, we do go through them anonymously. And when I put together the list of finalists, that's when I actually go back into my emails and find out who's who. And sometimes it's really surprising. Sometimes there are names that we've seen over and over again in years past. And then sometimes there are new names. And then, you think, oh, this might be so-and-so. And then it is or it isn't. But I'm excited for the judges today, because it stands today as we're recording. They're going to get the first look at who wrote what. And
Oh, wild.
since they've all been in the community for a long time, they're going to wind up seeing people they know and stuff like that. So it's always fun. But it's always kind of a wild array of stories. Okay, there's always something, like get your bingo cards out, because there is always something where the narrator or the main character turns out to be a dog. There's always something where, boy, we get a lot of murder. Watch your back, Humboldt, because people are out there thinking about doing murder. And there are, always some supernatural things. There's usually a future kind of dystopian Earth. There are some things that are themes that come back over and over. And then there are some that are just like wild and we're just blown away. And inevitably, people also send poems. Stop sending poems. They're not flash fiction. We run poems every week in the journal. Send us your poems then. But it's always fun to read. And, it's always fun, especially for me, to get together with the judges and hear what they have to say about everything.
Well, right on. Thank you for sharing your insights as the judge in this process. And I highly recommend people check it out because it really is. There's a lot of really interesting reads here. And it's quick. Anything that's, 99 words or less, you could read through relatively quickly. So you get a lot of bang for your time that you invest. So thanks, Jen.
And this is how you find out if your neighbor is like a secret writer.
Yeah, exactly. Little did we know how incredibly creative our neighbors can be. Well, awesome. Thank you. Hey, Thad, let's transition now to news coverage. What are you covering this week on the news beat?
Yeah, this week we are continuing our reporting on Title IX issues at Cal Poly Humboldt. The regular viewers, listeners, and readers will remember that we had a story about a month and a half ago about President Tom Jackson Jr.'s remarks at during his fall welcome address, talking about Title IX on campus that a lot of advocates and faculty and students found really problematic. Over the course of about 3 minutes during that address, Tom Jackson talked about Title IX and really cast it as a way to keep allegations private on campus. And he described HSU, or I'm sorry, Cal Poly Humboldt, as a campus full of secrets, and really spoke about Title IX issues honestly from a perpetrator's perspective of the perspective of the accused and the reasons that you wouldn't want those things in public view, and also from the perspective of the university as kind of bad PR, and saying kind of when people come forward to the media or to the public with their stories, meaning survivors of sexual assault and sexual harassment, he kind of cast them as taking a nip at the university or doing things for personal gain. Obviously, like I said, a lot of people found these comments really, really problematic. There's been continued fallout from them. The Academic Senate recently passed a resolution in support of sexual assault survivors on campus that kind of pointedly took President Jackson to task for some of the things he said. And President Jackson has since issued an apology, saying that he was inarticulate in his message and that he had kind of intended to describe the complexity of Title IX law and the reasons that the university can't be more forthcoming in discussing Title IX cases. I'm not going to speak to his intent, but that's not at all what he talked about during the welcome address. He was very clear, I felt like, over the course of, again, 3 minutes, not a short amount of time, in what he said. So this week, we're following up on that. We got a comment from the chancellor's office. I had reached out to all of the CSU trustees and the interim chancellor to kind of respond. The CSU system as a whole is at an inflection point with Title IX issues. The former chancellor, as some might recall, Chancellor Castro, resigned his position after USA Today released an investigative report kind of detailing the way he had really failed to act with a bunch of sexual assault and sexual harassment allegations at Fresno State University, where he was formerly president. And And so there's been continued fallout from that, and the CSU's system has launched a 23 campus audit where they, with a private firm that is coming to each campus and kind of going to do a run, kind of a full inventory of programs and policies at each campus and some recommendations for improvement. So kind of in this context, we reached out to the chancellor and the trustees for comment. Only heard back from a spokesperson on behalf of the chancellor, the interim chancellor, who probably didn't give a lot of solace to the folks who were concerned about the president's comments. They said that the chancellor is aware of them and is aware of the fallout from them, and then went on to say, the chancellor is committed to improvement, and that President Jackson's apology or clarifying comments, only reinforce his dedication to those improvements in the issue.
So there's a lot in the article, a lot of detail. Like I say, often I recommend folks check it out for themselves. But one of the perceptions that you convey in here is from the California Faculty Association. And the quote is that the audit is a, quote, performative review by a risk management law firm. And that's from the California Faculty Association website, saying they're concerned, quote, it will not go far enough in remedying the CSU. So can you unpack that a little bit? Obviously the firm is conducting an audit on behalf of the organization. Again, we can attribute to the specific motivations, but clearly there is at least one entity out there that thinks that maybe they're not going to get to the bottom of the issue, and maybe not. It won't be as transformative or impactful as it could be. Can you help us understand that a little bit better from your coverage?
Yeah, but I think the CFA's concerns, the Faculty Association's concerns are, and broader concerns, I think out there in campus communities, not just in Humboldt, but elsewhere in the CSU system, are kind of two-tiered. And one is that, the firm that the CSU hired, Cozen O'Connor, really does have a background in employment law defending employers, and doesn't have, a track record of representing survivors or representing plaintiffs against institutions. And so, based on, again, just kind of their resume, the feeling is that this is a firm brought in to see things from the CSU's perspective and not necessarily from a survivor-centered perspective of how do we improve these these policies, procedures, and systems to better serve people who have lived through these horrible experiences on campuses. And so I think that's where the kind of risk management blast comes from, is that they feel that's the perspective of the law firm, given its track record of work. So another issue that that folks concerned about, kind of the what's going to come of this audit point to is the schedule. And Cozen O'Connor has posted kind of a sample schedule of what its visits to each of the 23 CSU system campuses will look like. And they're 3-day visits, and I think there's 21 time slots in each of these, spread over each of these 3-day visits, and only one of them is for survivor advocate groups or advocate apparatuses on campuses, and all of the others are with Title IX teams, Title IX coordinators, deans of students, and basically administration officials. And so the concern is that they're not really going to hear. They're going to hear about policies and procedures, but they're not going to really hear from survivors about their lived experiences going through these types of systems on campus. And so I think the merging of these two things caused the CFA to not really have much faith in what the outcome is going to be. I mean, they very much see it as, the organization very much sees it as a public relations response to a public relations crisis rather than a legitimate attempt to improve these systems. I will say that just this morning, and I want to make sure I get this right, but I got an email informing me that at least for its visit to Cal Poly Humboldt, which begins on December 6th, Cozen O'Connor has agreed to host an open forum that anybody on campus, staff, faculty, and students can attend. Everybody will be allotted 3 minutes to address the firm's representatives with whatever they want. And so that will be held in the Great Hall on campus, December 6th from 3:45 to 4:45 p.m. And they've the Academic Senate president or chair has also informed the campus community that if they want to submit comments directly to Cozen O'Connor, they can. And that email address is calstatereview@cozen, that's COZEN.com.
Excellent. I know there's so much more in there about, you mentioned there's many groups that are getting interviewed from the basically faculty and administration, but there's one other sort of outside, I think it's the crisis response team is participating. So do you want to just real briefly, I know we just have a couple minutes left, say a little bit more about that other perspective that the faculty thought may not get represented, but that you said that now the audit is going to include, you included in your article some feedback from a representative of that organization.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the campus advocate team is essentially the team on campus that works directly with survivors to help them navigate both the Title IX system on campus, but also the criminal justice system if they choose to pursue that. And so I got a chance. That's run through the North Coast Rape Crisis team in Humboldt County, and I got a chance to catch up with Amanda LeBlanc, who is the relatively new executive director of North Coast Rape Crisis team, and she just talked about how she is hopeful about this review. She's looking forward to answering, Cozen O'Connor's questions and looking for ways to make these systems more survivor-centered. And she really pointed out that, Title IX inherently is designed to be neutral, is designed not to be survivor-focused. And so her feeling is that, yes, we need to improve Title IX, but we also need to really focus on other apparatuses on campus to make sure survivors are supported, like counseling. And then, first and foremost, to really focus on prevention and really, work on prevention and intervention to make sure that these Title IX services don't need to be used.
Awesome, Thad. Thank you so much for your coverage of this really important issue to our community. I know that you'll follow up once there's a public forum coming up in the next few days. So this is a story we'll continue to follow. So thank you for all your efforts on this one.
Thanks, Dave.
Oh, you got it. Jen, let's pivot to you. I know we're in the home stretch here, but tell us a little bit from the arts and features beat. We got a feel-good story this week.
Well, luckily for the last minute of our show, we've got a very speedy story because it is about Ryan Farmer, who is a Humboldt resident, somebody who's living in the Eel River Valley and started out in Southern California as a skateboarder and then got heavy into street luge. Street luge. Do you remember Luge from the Winter Olympics, which looks like somebody in a personal sled lying down and running through a frozen water slide? Yeah. Well, that insanity also happens on a non-frozen road with something that's like a person-sized skateboard. And Farmer got into it because, as they said, it was a cheap way to run a high-speed race. And so last month, 29-year-old Ferndale resident Ryan Farmer, and you can read more about this in Tamara Burris's excellent story this week in the Journal. They won the World Skate Games in Argentina as a member of the downhill skate team. So the picture is really great. It just looks like people in really high tech, motorcycle gear, but just sitting on skateboards and zipping downhill, just screwing around. But in fact, they've reached crazy high speeds, and it's a really niche community. And anyway, Farmer, they've been able to travel all over the world to see, all different countries competing in these races. And they've also gotten a lot of really wonderful feedback and support from the people who go and other competitors. In fact, when they couldn't get their skateboard at one point, is it called a skateboard? Luge board? I don't know. Fast, Luge. Terrifying, rolly thing. They couldn't get it. I think it was lost in shipping or something. All these people, total strangers, got together and made sure that they got a board to them so they could compete in the race. And it's kind of wonderful. And looking forward to hearing more about it. Farmer is also going to try and set up a street luge race sometime next year. So stay tuned and I guess start practicing. I don't know.
Right on. Well, thank you so much. I'm sorry we only had a few minutes for this one, but Ryan Farmer, world champion, street luger, Humboldt representative, Humboldt resident, and is going to work on getting street luge events here locally. So more to come in the future. That's awesome. Thanks, Jen.
Thank you.
You got it. Well, unfortunately, that's all the time we have. I wish we had more time. I love chatting with you guys about the crazy, amazing, diverse things you guys cover each week. So, we got to wrap it up. But North Coast Journal is available on newsstands now. Pick one up. Stay informed. Also available online 24/7, so you could check them out anytime. Again, Thad and Jen, thank you so much. We appreciate you guys in a big way.
Thanks,
See you
Dave.
next week.
Thanks, everyone out there, for listening, and we'll connect with you again next week. Take care till then. Bye, guys.